V Rising has been out now for a little over 2 weeks, and you're seeing a rise of players who have progressed through the entirety of the game. Pair this with the recent dev blog post where they gave a vague update on upcoming content and their plans for the future, and I thought that no better time than now to talk about what I think are the top 5 things V Rising needs to add to their game. This is a personal list of mine, and if you disagree with any of these things or think other content ideas are more important, please let me know in the comments below. And if you enjoy my V Rising content, be sure to like and subscribe, and check me out at twitch.tv/Redlaf where I stream this game all the time. Without further ado, let's talk about the top 5 things V Rising needs to add to their game. Number 5. A world that engages with you. This thought of mine was actually sparked by this Reddit post, where Thopter Thalid talked about random events that the devs could build upon to take place with their system for blood moons already. These included a full moon, a witch hunt, foggy day, army of the dead, deluge, and something wicked. This lines up with my biggest complaint about world immersion, and that's the way the game is designed. It's only ever you interacting with it, never it interacting with you. You search and find guards to fight. You go to take down V-Blood bosses. You build a castle that is only ever attacked by other players. I think in this world setting they've built of vampires versus humans, adding systems where the humans actually come after you instead would be really enjoyable. Imagine a world where vampire hunters raid your castle and then a siege golem gets dropped and you gotta fight off both swarms of humans and vampire enemies. Or maybe after you beat a V-Blood unit, Styx would be the perfect way of doing this since he's already a vampire, they come back and hunt you down instead. These are things that I think would just make this a more engaging world. Number 4. More mechanics for raiding. Right now when you raid a castle, all you mainly do is break through honeycombs, fight servants and players, then grab loot and dip. It's really fun, but you get to a point in the game where loot doesn't matter as much if you aren't dying all the time, and it's just raiding for soul shards. And if you're defending a raid, you get nothing besides keeping what you already have. Siege golems drop nothing on death. If you're on Merciless, you can get the enemy gear, but that's it. And then you have to repair everything. It's a really fun system, but pretty hollow, that could have a lot more in it. For attacking, having options for maybe siege weapons or bringing servants with you, but if the servant dies you can't resummon them, would be really fun. And if you're defending, I love to be able to set up real traps in my castle. Right now, as I mentioned in my How to Defend Your Castle video, you could do things like death rooms with summoned ghouls or captured werewolves, or have choke points with servants in them to fight at. But beyond that, there's not much you can do. I'd love to be able to set up fake chests that if an enemy opens they get attacked, or pressure plates in rooms that traps activate, etc. Increasing the depth of raiding would make it more engaging and help players feel more comfortable with being able to log off for a night and not burn out on the game. Number 3. Extended post-game content. Obviously, before you bring your pitchforks to my castle, this game is early access and we know this content is coming. However, the post-game of this game can get stale incredibly fast. After you beat Solaris, the game just abruptly stops and then you're left wondering what to do. If you're PvE, you decorate your castle or quit. If you're PvP, you do a bunch of raids and then swap servers. And while I know there are more V-Blood bosses coming and would love to see that soon, eventually with new bosses you'll have the same issue. So creating post-game systems to give you tasks and things to do once you're done with V-Blood bosses would be incredibly nice and very beneficial for PvP servers to retain players. The Soul Shard system in PvP helps a lot with giving direction, but I think more similar systems should be added. Maybe you can go to an area that is AI generated as you fight through until you die or leave with loot to give you drops at rare items, or really anything. Like I said, I know they've talked about adding more in-game content and that Solaris is not the final boss, but post-game content is still my number 3 thing that should be added. Number 2. Alternate or generated map designs. I think it'd be really beneficial for this game to have changed maps. Whether that's just a list of options to change around, or for maps to be auto-generated like games like Valheim or Minecraft. While I understand they have a really clean and sufficient map, they can still allow for changes to keep it interesting. Nowadays on servers, players already have down optimized routes to get to level 30 before their 1 hour PvP timer is down, and everyone knows the best castle spots that get snatched up in the first 5 minutes of a server's lifespan. So creating more map variety or auto-generated maps would really help with a lot of these issues. And they could keep the same structure of Farbane, Dunley, Silverlight, etc. and the same setup of where they all are, just change up location of bosses and base plateaus within each of those zones. This would help a lot with replayability, especially on competitive servers where you need to be on the second it wipes and grinding if you don't want another group with a perfectly optimized route to be on Iron Gear while you're on Bone Gear. And finally, number 1, a more dynamic combat incentive system. What do I mean by this? Well, right now, PvP and V-Rising is perhaps the best part in my opinion, and I love it. Having not played a huge amount of Battlerite, the style of combat I just find so engaging, and all the options for builds make my mind go crazy. However, with this amazing combat system comes a flaw in the game design. It's not really the easiest thing to be able to do. Right now there are 2 forms of combat in the world, open world and raids, neither of which happen at a high frequency, especially when the server has been up for over a few days. Open world PvP happens the most on the fresh server when everyone is low level and you get a lot of fights at the copper mines, but you don't have access to all your abilities at that time. And raids can happen, but there's a limited time, and usually they're scuffed in some degree of defenders not being online, or one side not being as prepared as they could be, and oftentimes I've seen players just quit servers after being raided to find the new fresh wipe. Thus, in my 150 hours into the game already, it has become a nuisance to get consistent quality fights. The best of which I found is just hosting my own private server so we can do duels for the time being. So there needs to be a combat incentive system, whether that's looking at ways to give more rewards outside players looting for fighting, or a notoriety system on the server to see who's the biggest target and who's the biggest bounty hunter, or even just access to dueling other players without damaging or losing gear. There's a ton of options here, and this pairs nicely with helping servers last longer, because if there is better incentive to stick in the server for the PvP, then players might find themselves server hopping less. And yeah, those are my top 5 things V-Rising needs to add to their game. Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. Till next time.